A cowboy's badge of honor wasn't a silver saddle. It was a $10 horse and a $40 saddle, barely enough to survive when most earned just $25 a month. Forget Hollywood. In the real Wild West, even legends like Wild Bill Hickok were paid 6 times more than the men risking their lives on the trail. So how did ordinary cowhands cope when their entire annual pay couldn't even buy a decent horse, let alone climb the frontier's economic ladder? To find out, we have to trace every cent, every sacrifice, and the brutal choices behind the numbers. A cowboy's world began with a ledger, not a legend. At the start of the season, his pay was already spoken for. Ranch payrolls from the Texas Panhandle to Kansas railheads list the same hard numbers, $25 to $40 a month with room and board. On a trail drive, the going rate was $1 a day, about $100 for an entire summer's work. But before a single steer was moved, the cost of simply existing as a cowboy swallowed nearly everything. The phrase was everywhere: $10 for a horse, $40 for a saddle. A basic kit, if bought outright, meant scraping together $3.75 for boots, $3 for a felt hat, and 50 cents for spurs. The total, $50 to $75 before buying a single cartridge or meal. Most didn't even own their horse. The animal was property of the ranch, its number inked in a ledger. Saddles might be purchased on credit, with deductions marked month after month, often outlasting the job itself. Store ledgers and ranch account books show cowhands taking small advances just to patch boots or replace a worn bridle. The margin for saving was razor thin. A year's wages, $300 to $400, barely covered the cost of staying in the saddle, let alone buying a better horse or dreaming of land. For the average hand, the math was relentless, and the ledger rarely balanced in his favor. A Colt single-action army revolver, the so-called Peacemaker, cost $17 to $17.50 straight from the factory in 1873. For the average cowboy, that was a full month's wages gone in a single purchase. If he could spare it at all, most couldn't. Shelling out for a firearm meant living lean or taking on debt, and the cost of a gun rivaled the price of a saddle. A matched pearl-handled Colt set with holsters ran up to $100, 4 months' pay, an impossible luxury for most hands. The Winchester Model 1873 rifle, a favorite on the range, debuted at $50. But even as the price fell to $19.50 by the 1890s, it still represented weeks of labor. Ammunition was another drain. A box of cartridges cost 50 cents, a small sum on paper, but a steady leak from a thin wallet. The .44-40 caliber, shared by both the Colt and the Winchester, offered a rare advantage. One cartridge fit both weapons, cutting down on what a man needed to buy and carry. Even with this efficiency, the combined investment for a basic revolver and rifle could swallow 2 or 3 months of wages. For many, the math simply didn't work. Some cowboys went unarmed, relying on the employer's gun or borrowing from a bunkmate. The myth of every cowboy riding armed to the teeth fades against the reality of pay slips and price lists. When a weapon cost as much as a month's labor, self-defense became a matter of privilege, not just necessity. A cheap horse might get a cowboy started, but the real hierarchy began well above the bargain bin. Probate ledgers and ranch remuda lists from the era reveal a steep price ladder. An average workhorse, dependable, sturdy, commanded $150, half a year's pay for most hands. A good saddle horse, the kind trusted for long drives or rough country, cost $200 or more. Premium cattle horses, trained for cutting and roping, pushed the price to $250 or $300, a sum out of reach for nearly every working cowboy. Ownership of such an animal was rare. Most cowhands rode mounts owned by the ranch, their value tracked in detailed inventories. The only asset a cowboy could truly claim was his saddle. Durable, yes, but even the best saddles, carefully maintained, passed from hand to hand, lasted a decade or two under daily use, not a lifetime. Selling a saddle meant the end of the line. In this world, the gap between what a cowboy rode and what he owned was measured in months of hard labor and a mountain of debt. Jesse James and his gang pulled in an estimated $200,000 from 20 robberies, a fortune that dwarfed a cowboy's lifetime earnings. Sam Bass's crew struck the Big Springs train in 1877, walking away with $60,000 in gold. Butch Cassidy's first bank job in Telluride paid out $20,000 to split among the gang. These numbers weren't just headlines, they were temptations, especially when honest work meant scraping by on $360 a year. Outlaws needed more than grit. They invested up to $1,000 in fresh horses and escape gear, knowing every heist might be their last. Most bounties hovered around $100, barely enough to cover a stolen horse, but Jesse James carried a rare $10,000 price on his head. Even so, the average outlaw career lasted just 2 to 5 years before the law, or a bullet, caught up. The rewards were staggering, but so were the risks. Supervisory roles on the open range brought a rare degree of economic breathing room. Payroll ledgers from outfits like the XYT and King Ranch list trail bosses earning $100 a month, 4 times what a starting hand could hope for. Foreman drew $50, and a skilled camp cook could command anywhere from $60 to $100, depending on the season and the size of the herd. With this kind of pay, a trail boss could buy a quality $200 saddle horse in just 2 months, or invest in a premium tooled leather saddle for $60 to $100 without years of saving. Matched Colt revolvers, priced at $35 to $50 for the pair, were suddenly within reach. These middle-class positions didn't guarantee wealth, but they did offer the chance to own better gear, save for land, or even build a modest herd, luxuries that remained out of reach for most who rode beneath them. Probate inventories from the cattle baron era read like catalogs of excess. Custom-engraved Colt revolvers, each bearing the owner's initials or a family crest, commanded anywhere from $100 to $500 apiece, enough to buy a dozen working men's sidearms. Matched pairs with ivory or pearl handles could fetch $200 to $400, the price of a good saddle horse. The arms room didn't stop at pistols. A Winchester 1 of 1,000 rifle, prized for its accuracy and rarity, cost $100 to $150, with only 133 ever made. Horseflesh was a display of wealth in motion. Thoroughbred and champion stock went for $500 to $2,000 each, and it was common for a baron's will to list a string of 5 to 10 horses, valued collectively at $2,000 to $5,000. The parade saddle, gleaming with silver conchos and hand-tooled leather, ran $200 to $500, more than a year's wage for a skilled foreman. Receipts and estate records show these were not one-off purchases, but deliberate investments in status, each piece a marker of success and permanence in a world where most men owned nothing. In the baron's world, money transformed necessity into spectacle, and the ledger never ran dry. 5 rungs divided the West's economic ladder, each with a price tag and a hard ceiling. At the bottom stood the broke drifter. Possessions rarely topped $100, with a $10 horse, a $30 saddle, and borrowed weapons. Sometimes all that separated him from walking. The working cowboy, a step up, might claim $200 to $500 in total gear, but his horse still belonged to the boss. Foremen and trail bosses entered the $500 to $1,500 range, able to own a decent mount and quality sidearms. Small ranchers needed $2,000 to $10,000 just to start, buying 100 head at $22.50 each, a bull for $90, and enough equipment to last a season. At the top, cattle barons operated with $20,000 to $100,000 or more. Custom weapons, strings of champion horses, and silver parade saddles. Converting these figures, a $17.50 Colt Peacemaker now equals roughly $450. A $150 horse is $4,000. And the average cowboy's $30 monthly wage would barely reach $900 today. Less than 5% ever climbed past labor to ownership, and over 80% never owned the horse they rode. 7 to 10 years was the typical cowboy career, just long enough to see the odds stacked against them. In the 1870s, an average cowboy earned just $25 to $40 a month, barely enough to buy a basic saddle, let alone a horse of his own. Probate inventories and payroll ledgers confirm that more than 80% of cowhands never owned the animals they rode, and that fewer than 5% ever rose to become small ranchers. The records show that while a Colt revolver cost an entire month's wages, cattle barons spent thousands on custom weapons, silver tack, and champion horses. Despite these sharp inequalities, the myth of upward mobility endures. What remains unclear is how many stories of individual grit truly led to lasting fortune, since most cowboys left behind little more than their worn-out boots and a battered saddle. Today, the hard numbers reveal that economic opportunity in the Wild West depended less on courage than on capital. The real legacy is a frontier defined not by legend, but by the brutal arithmetic of survival and wealth.